Uhuru, brothers and sisters and comrades. This is Omali Yeshitela. I'm chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and I'm also leader of the International Uhuru Movement that is leader of the African Revolution. I want to appreciate everybody coming to this important discussion. And as you know, what we will be talking about is what the indictment of Donald Trump means to African people. Before going into that, or perhaps as a part of this discussion, it's significant, it's very important for us to also acknowledge that today, April 4th, is the 55th anniversary of the US government of assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And 55 years ago, 2 days following the assassination of King, 17-year-old Bobby Hutton from the Black Panther Party was also gunned down in Oakland, California. It was a moment in history that's similar to this moment in history, where we are discussing the issue of Donald Trump and the significance of the arrest and indictment and charging of Donald Trump. It was a moment when not only did we see the assassination of Martin Luther King, Bobby Hutton, incredible internal turbulence in this country, massive mobilizations, hundreds of thousands at different times in the country, protesting the US war, murderous, genocidal colonial war being pursued against the heroic people of Vietnam. It was a time that followed shortly the liberation of Cuba, which happened in 1959. Fred Hampton was killed in 1959. We saw the assassination of US President John Fitzgerald Kennedy happening in this same time frame. It was a tremendous period of turbulence and of crisis in the social system that revealed itself not only in the desperate US wars being made against peoples, as I mentioned, in places like Vietnam. It was preceded by the war that was being made against people in Iran, and of course Cuba, the blockade, the ongoing process of blockading Cuba with the attempt to crush that people's right to be free. It was a period that King lived in where the struggle against colonialism, that is to say, the foreign and alien domination of peoples, had reached its height. And because colonialism is a parasitic social system, it means that the people who were fighting to be free from colonialism were challenging the lives and lifestyle of the colonizers. And the colonizers are the small minority of people based primarily, but not solely, in Europe, because we've seen other colonial forces, particularly Japan, at critical moments in this history as well. So a point that I would make is that the United States was confronted during the time of King's assassination with struggles everywhere. And Black people's struggle was on the top of the agenda that created this crisis, that contributed to the execution, assassination of the US president. It was a moment where assassinations became actually a means of struggle inside this country. 1969, of course, we saw this is a year after the murder of King. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was working with the New York Police Department and indicted 21 members of the Black Panther Party in New York, the so-called Panther 21. And part of the point that I would make is that at times of crisis like this, political trials abound. And this is something that's really important for us. When the system is incapable of defending itself based on what are supposed to be its principles of free speech, freedom of association, freedom to be able to participate in the electoral process for the attainment of power, when it becomes impossible for the system to represent itself and defend itself based on its principles, what it has always done, especially during moments of crisis, is utilize the power of the state, the power of coercion to carry out its will. And when we talk about the state, what we are talking about is the police, the courts. We're talking about these instruments of coercion like military, CIA, FBI. All these things are arms of the state. But there is this, inside the United States, there's this fallacious thing that's being taught to the people, that people have free will and freedom to do this and that they can participate in political life without fear of retaliation by the state. There's this assumption of a neutral state, that the court system is neutral, that the police department is neutral, that the CIA and FBI are simply there to protect the rights of the people and things like that. That's how it's presented. But in every time of crisis, what we see is that it's clear that it doesn't work that way. And that's what we are now at a point of crisis. Donald Trump has been indicted in the Manhattan court, and he was indicted 3 days ago. He was arrested, turned himself in, arrested at the Manhattan court today. He was arraigned and he was charged with 34 felony counts. And the counts revolve around the charge that Donald Trump somehow defrauded the government through his participation, through his business fraud. And this was something. This particular indictment was initiated by Alvin Bragg, who's chief prosecutor in the state of New York, and who, when he ran for office, had boasted as a part of his campaign that he had sued Donald Trump more than 100 times. And this was part of the platform that he used to get elected. And he was elected in part with the assistance of Soros, George Soros, a billionaire white guy who involved himself in political activity and issues and campaigns all around the world, and had made it a project inside the United States to function as a kind of pressure relief valve when so many Africans were being killed by the police. So much for your freedom of assembly and freedom of association. When so many Africans were being killed by the police, and when the district attorneys in every instance refused to indict them, Soros made it a point to organize and win Africans to come to become district attorneys, and this was to function as a kind of pressure relief valve, because with this continuous murder of African people by the government, clearly it was just a matter of time before the people would discover the African People's Socialist Party, and that we had to fight not just to get some kind of relief under colonialism, but remove ourselves from the grips of colonialism altogether. So some of the people who Soros put forth have done some relatively progressive things as it goes for participation within the court system, the state apparatus. But the thing is, again, it was like a pressure relief valve. It functioned to keep people wedded to the state apparatus, locked into belief of the system, and helping the system to solve the problems within the context of the existing social system. Donald Trump was just charged by Bragg with 34 counts. And like I said, they revolved around some kind of charge of fraud with his businesses. But the fact is that the statute of limitations had passed. So they couldn't do that to Trump based just on that law. So they searched and came up with the fact, with the concept, as it's been characterized, a novel concept that Stormy Daniels, the porn star, whom Trump is accused to have given $130,000 to keep quiet about whatever their relationship was, because he was running for president, that somehow his doing that turned into a felony charge because it didn't go into accounting as financial contributions, something to that effect. So they put together 34 counts, and that's what he is now on trial for. And I see many people are cheering the fact that Trump is on trial. And the U.S. Liberal and government pundits, liberal and otherwise, are saying that the indictment and arrest of Donald Trump is clear evidence that no one is above the law. And that's what they're saying. And so you see, for the first time in the history of this country, you talk about crisis, that a former president of the United States is facing criminal charges, but is also facing criminal charges during an election season. The 2024 election is nearly upon us, and the campaigning has already begun. And Trump has already announced that he is a candidate for the presidency. And so the charge that they make against Trump, which to many so-called legal scholars and what have you didn't make any sense, given the fact that he was going to be facing some kind of charge related to January 6th and the uprisings there and other things associated with that. Why charge him, they said, some of them say, with this sex-related hush money payment? Why charge him with that? And of course, part of the reason they would charge him with that is because the election season is upon us. And whether they win this or not, because Trump can still run for president, even if he's convicted, whether they convict Trump for this or not, the fact is that they have created this situation where there's an ongoing assault, a tawdry assault, if you will, on what might be characterized as his reputation, certainly for moralistic people, that is associated with a sex scandal, that she's a porn star. That's how they've characterized this woman, Stormy Daniels. And so that it's a part of a political campaign to undermine his support where it can be won. And that's not going to happen with much of his base, because just since the 3 days of his indictment to now, Trump has raised $7 million for re-election. So it's not for those people who are part of his base, but to tarnish it other places where people may be on the fence, where people may be something they call independents, where people may not be haven't made a determination one way or another. So that's part of what it is. And so now Trump is being charged for this. It's a really interesting situation, and people are cheering it because Trump is a really disgusting person from what we know about him. And it's easy to do that. The way he's characterized and slandered Black people, the way he's characterized and slandered our people in Africa and other kinds of places. We know all of that about Trump. We know how Trump played a role in the conviction, the slanderous conviction of those 5 young Africans in 1989 called the Central Park 5, and that resulted in a major frame up, and even this term wilding becoming very popular. That's how they said the young people who allegedly raped this white woman in Central Park were about. So, Trump played a role in promoting that, and et cetera. So we know that Trump's not that good. And, we know how Trump, in terms of his real estate dealings, et cetera, no vacancies for black people. He did all of that stuff. So the issue is not about whether Trump is good or bad. The issue is what this indictment means. And part of what this indictment means is that we've reached a place of crisis where political trials are everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are political trials. When the government cannot defend itself on the so-called principles that it supposedly believes in, then it turns to the state, to the police, the FBI, the CIA, organizations like this to pursue people and their opponents as criminals. And because you have a system that cannot say that it's a crime to have a policy difference, or it's a crime to take on issues that consider disputations by sectors of the bourgeoisie, then they come up with this thing about the fraud, the cover-up of hush money payments and stuff like that. That's not the only one you see. You see this all around this country. If you are on social media, if you are reading newspaper articles, et cetera, you see throughout the country that these political trials are abounding. They're political trials even related to January 6th crisis of the social system. It's so critical that anything that anybody says or does now is magnified many times over in terms of the stability of a social system. In fact, just recently I was looking at this article in Foreign Affairs, which is a bourgeois publication. This is the publications you can buy and you can order it and you can find it in some of your bookstores, but you won't find it in the checkout line at the supermarket or anything like that. It's written for the bourgeoisie. But here's something that they're talking about in terms of this recent piece that they've just done. And it says that although many Americans hope that the chaos that came with Trump's presidency would end when he left office, and they're saying that these authors writing here wrote in January 2022 that the danger had not passed. The United States may not be heading toward autocracy, they said, but it could be facing a period of protracted regime instability, marked by repeated constitutional crises, heightened political violence, and possibly periods of authoritarian rule. This is how the bourgeoisie is summing this up. So I'm saying this as it even relates to this issue of Trump, because it is a serious crisis that the system is now engaged in. Like in the 1960s when they faced Vietnam and the successful struggle of the Vietnamese people to wrest themselves away from the colonial domination of the United States, like they faced in the 1960s when even in 1962, thousands, hundreds of people from throughout the world gathered in Havana, Cuba, to create an organization of African and Asian and people of Latin America to fight against colonialism. Just as that period was spoke to a certain crisis in this country that contributed to assassinations of presidents and things like this. So the political disputes, the crisis, represented itself as huge fights, even among the bourgeoisie. The assassination of Kennedy, the bourgeoisie fighting the assassination of Robert Kennedy, the brother of the president, bourgeoisie fighting each other and using, and in many instances, instruments of state power like the FBI, CIA, etc. So when the crisis happens, anything that challenges the system functions to destabilize the system. And that's something that we should recognize. So we look at this thing about Trump. And I see people saying that that the very conflict these days, this is the last African, and if I could only find your words in time. There are people who really celebrate this thing with Trump because they want something bad to happen to Trump. But I think the worst thing that you can make happen to Trump is to win independence. And so that you don't have to rely on their state apparatus, you have your own state apparatus. And you're not going to get a solution here. This is the bourgeoisie fighting among themselves. If the bourgeoisie, if there was an interest in charging Trump with a crime, they wouldn't have to wait until now. You notice that Trump has never been charged with a crime that he's committed against the people. He's never been charged even with anything that he did with the New York 5 young people from Central Park, or with how he used the police and the army to come out to break up a demonstration, peaceful demonstration that the people were having. And he walks out, use the military to stand in front of a church and hold up a Bible or something like that. There's no charge against that. There's nothing about that. There's no charge against Trump for what he has done in terms of putting people in cages on the border. They didn't charge Trump with any crime for doing that. No crime when he deprived African people in Puerto Rico from resources after the hurricane and went there and threw paper towels at the people as if that were some kind of collusion. He wasn't charged with anything for doing that. And because that's not a crime. It's only a crime when they commit offenses against each other. The bourgeoisie fighting against the bourgeoisie, the colonial powers, the colonial ruling class, with their own disagreements and differences over policy and over the economic trajectory of the country, so that their interests as economic and political forces don't suffer. So we've seen this over and over again. I mean, even the notion that somehow Trump is going to be tainted with a sex-related crime, and where if sex-related crimes was something that should taint your reputation and possibly lead to indictment and criminal charges, then Bill Clinton, the prince out of England, all of these people, and some very notoriously famous people in the United States as well, on those airplanes with Jeffrey Epstein, traveling to different places to rape children, girls. You don't hear anything about that. There's no criminal charges associated with anything like that. So when they attack the people, nothing. When they put up walls separating people from Mexico, from their own land and resources, no charges against that. No charges when Trump and the United States government assassinated the Iranian general in January 2020, used a targeted missile to kill this man, violating all kinds of international law. No charges about that. That's not what they're concerned about. When they commit offenses against the people, nothing. It's when they commit offenses against each other that we see these kinds of indictments and the use of the state apparatus as political instruments. And most of you know that the African People's and the African People's Socialist Party Uhuru movement were attacked on July 29th. This very obvious kind of attack. They use flashbang grenades. They use battering rams. They use armored vehicles to attack my home, to attack the well-being and safety of my wife, to attack other comrades who are part of this movement, to destroy our properties, etc. FBI did that, along with the local police department. They did this because there's no crime. The fact is that we've entered into this period of where it's obvious that anything that's being said that's supposed to be representative of the rights of people in this country, these noble concepts, these noble rights, that they challenge the stability of this country, so they can't tolerate even a discussion. And this is what you see happening now. Just think about this. 100 and some odd years ago, Marcus Garvey initiated the Universal Negro Improvement Associations and African Communities League. And immediately when this happened, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, who before the FBI, but was an initial force developing the FBI, he cut his teeth on attacking and spying on Marcus Garvey. In fact, the FBI integrated itself as a part of a process to have somebody who could spy on the Garvey movement. They couldn't say that Garvey was guilty of fighting for freedom for Black people, of buying steamship lines that was going to connect African people around the world economically. They couldn't say that. They couldn't say that Garvey was guilty of instilling in African people within the United States and around the world just the amazing sense of self-confidence and recognition that we should be in control of our own lives. They couldn't say that. They couldn't say that they attacked Garvey because Garvey was saying at the time where Europeans were debating who was going to get what part of Africa again. He said Africa for Africans at home and abroad, and actually build institutional capacity to make that happen. They couldn't say that's why they were charging Marcus Garvey. They couldn't. They wanted to liquidate the political basis of the attack on Marcus Garvey by charging with a crime. His crime was supposed to be what? Defrauding the U.S. mails by selling stock. So Black people buying stock. And even that was such a fraudulent, odious, specious charge that it didn't make any sense, but it didn't matter. The point is that this was a political attack on our movement, our people, that use the power of the state to do it, because they cannot say upright that reason we are attacking Garvey, the reason we putting him in prison is not because he was standing up for Black people and trying to bring a better life for Black people, but they created a crime that he had to have committed, and so put him in jail for that. Even though there's all kinds of documents and testimony coming from Hoover and others saying that we can't find anything that gives us a legal reason for deporting him, kicking him out of the country. They said, keep on looking, and they came up with that. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about they attack the African People's Socialist Party. They say we are criminals. They say that we are employed by the Russians to do what? They can't say that it's against the law for Africans to come together and revive or communities that have been destroyed by gentrification and white power predators who are taking our lands and leaving us homeless and things like that. They can't say that's why we're attacking you. They can't say we are attacking you because you're building a health center for African women, or because you're building a cafe, a bakery that will provide a space for African people to come, decent space to enjoy themselves, and that where we are training Africans who are coming out of the prison system to be able to participate in the culinary arts, to learn how to run their own businesses. They can't say that we are attacking the African People's Socialist Party because the African People's Socialist Party, in addition to doing that, has created an African International Workforce Program that would do this training and that would actually house Black people in properties that the African People's Socialist Party, or the Uhuru movement, I should say, that has purchased for them. And not only did we purchase it for them, it was named for political prisoners. The building itself, the enterprise itself, named for Richard Mafunda Lake out of Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most courageous Africans who've ever fought for the freedom of Black people out of Alabama. They can't say that the reason we are attacking because we got a name of one of the apartments for Sada Shakur, or for Matula Shakur, or for Sundiata Akoli, or for Desi Woods. They can't say that's why they're doing it. And because these are the things that elevate African people, make us strong, make us powerful, make us be able to see the world the way it is. They can't say that the reason they are attacking the African People's Socialist Party is because the African People's Socialist Party has created a movement that has brought the African movement, African population back together after the vicious, murderous military assault that was made against us all around the world and inside the United States that killed Malcolm X, that killed Martin Luther King 55 years ago today, that killed Patrice Lumumba, that overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. They can't say that this is what they are protecting, that kind of system. So they come up with this nonsense, this charge. They're using the power of the state because they cannot win an ideological and political debate. They cannot win an ideological and political struggle with us, so they resort to the use of the colonial state power, the military forces to shut us up. And this is what we're seeing happening today all over the country. We are an outstanding example of it, and the most important example of it, because Black people have always been the foundation that has held together this whole social system. And when we've struggled to change our conditions and our status in life, it's changing the whole system. The whole system, it shudders when the African population moves for freedom. They can't say they're attacking us because we're uniting Africa the way that Garvey united it before, that there are actually African organizations under the party's leadership in West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, Central Africa. They can't say that's why we're doing it, but that's why they're doing it. And it's really important for us to, they can't say that they're attacking the African People's Socialist Party because we resolved this question of the white people. You know, who are the white people? Did we just run around saying down with the white people, or do we have a program that recognizes their existence and moves to win whatever can be won, to participate to forward the struggle of African people? That includes a situation where right now, under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, there are white people in more than 141 cities in this country working to win reparations. They represent Black power in white face. They can't say that's why they're attacking us. They say because they believe, they say, in everybody living happily together and everybody being together in a non-racial society, etc. But they recognize that when we talk about looking at the nature of the system and winning groups of white people to unity with the struggle against colonialism in this country, that's a profound contradiction. They can't handle that. And so they come up with criminal charges against us. And our economic programs, economic development programs. So they have indicted me. They have indicted Comrade Akile Anayi, one of the most outstanding and important leaders of our party and our movement. They have not indicted. They've characterized us as unindicted co-conspirators, but indictments are on the way. Penny Hess, who for more than 40 years has worked under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, fighting for reparations to African people, which is a really profound struggle because the party gets reparations. And that's another thing we should never be forgiven for, because people are talking about reparations. Are reparations possible? Will the government give reparations? Well, we say the reparations question is a function of the revolution of winning political power for African people. Reparations serves to negate the authority, the power, the capacity of the colonial economy to dominate our lives. And we pull numbers of white people into voluntary reparations. We don't have to wait for reparations to come to the basketball court that I referenced a moment ago that we built, that they cannot say that they are attacking us because the basketball court is there, but the more than $150,000 donated by white people in the form of reparations to make that happen. Jesse Neville is another one of the unindicted co-conspirators. He is the person who is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is more mass in terms of its participation than the African People's Solidarity Committee that works directly under our leadership. He is the one who is responsible for organizing white people in more than 141 cities to be a part of the Black Power movement. And so he's indicted, but they can't say they're indicting him because he's participating in winning white people to support Black people's struggle, righteous struggle to be free, to get reparations. So they say that they're indicting us because we work for the Russians. Just like they couldn't say why they were indicting Garvey, just like they couldn't tell the truth about why they indicted and put on trial 21 members of the Black Panther Party, just like they couldn't say why It was truthfully that they arrested W.E.B. Du Bois in 1951 on the same charges that they allude I am guilty of having committed. And all he was doing was running around calling for peace at a time where the so-called Cold War was heating up, and the United States was driving this effort to initiate the Third World War. They couldn't say that's why they did it. They couldn't say that they arrested W.E.B. They hounded and arrested, well, certainly helped to ostracize and destroy the reputation and the life of Paul Robeson, because he was winning allies and friends, helping to bring peoples all around the world together to recognize that we're one common human family trying to overcome injustices. So they made him a member of the Communist Party who was somehow working for Russia as well. These are the kinds of things that we're talking about when you look at what's happening today. You have to be careful. You cannot celebrate this indictment of Trump because once you celebrate this indictment of Trump for a political offense, and that's what it is, it's a political offense. It has nothing to do with criminal activity, because if it did, the Kennedys, with a whole history of rape going back for I don't know how long they've been involved in it, none of them would be walking the streets free today. And Clinton running around on these airplanes, they're going for the purpose of raping children with Epstein here. And they killed Epstein before he could even say anything while he was locked up in prison. And then, of course, the woman who was with him has become the fall person, and nobody else is able to tell the story of what happened. So you have all of these offenses that's been committed against the people by the bourgeoisie, by elements of the bourgeoisie, no charges at all. But they kill us in public view. They kill us where thousands and thousands of people actually view them on videos and things like that, no charges at all. But when we began to organize and win people to understanding what the struggle is about, when we win and pull together the Black liberation movement after this murderous assault on us and built a coalition, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. African People's Socialist Party built this organization. And it pulled together 18 different organizations up to now and gave the Black liberation movement coherence and cohesion. Once again, after it had been destroyed, it had a mission. It had something that it could work with collectively. It made place in the center of this discussion the whole issue of fighting against colonialism, challenging the obscene notion of having to be fighting against white people not liking us, or fighting against what they like to characterize as racism. African People's Socialist Party did this. African People's Socialist Party made reparations a household word in this country. African People's Socialist Party held a World Tribunal on reparations in 1982. Tupac's mama, Sada Shakur, grand revolutionary woman on her own, the woman who actually defended herself when she was a part of the Panther 21 in New York City, and they beat the case after 2.5 years being locked up. She testified. Leonard Jeffries, the well-respected historian in the African community now, started his career being this popular figure at that World Tribunal on reparations for African people. And guess what? This tribunal happened under international law. And one of the laws that we used at that time in 1982 was the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. We did that. And today, of course, we are facing some kind of charges because the Russians allegedly told us to go out and push some process to win, to get the United States taken before the United Nations for genocide. We did that in 1982. We did that. So the African People's Socialist Party is under attack, but it is the African Revolution, the African people who just want to be free, who just want our happiness back, who just want a return of all the resources stolen from us, who want to see a new world, a different kind of world that is not based on some kind of exploitation, oppression, genocide, etc. And we know that such a world can occur. And that's what we've been fighting for more than 50 years. And so this nonsense, this notion that they would charge us with some kind of criminal action is what we are talking about now. This is a political attack. This is a political attack under the state. This is a political attack because they are not capable of having a legitimate discussion, debate, politically and ideologically around the rights and freedom of Africans and other peoples around the world. And it's at a moment of serious crisis where everybody in the world is rising up. We're like in the 1960s where they had considered Russia this great threat. They say Russia is a threat today because now the United States does not have unilateral authority over the world. It is not just the United States. It's not just it's China. It's people around the world taking back our freedom, and that upsets the entire social system that's based on parasitism. I just want to say this, comrade, that black freedom is illegal, and it has always been illegal. And you understand that, don't you? And that's why so-called aliens are illegal. The ones they define, the real aliens defined as aliens are illegal because they have an economy and a political economy that rests upon the foundation of slavery and of colonialism. So under a foundation, under this economy based on slavery and colonialism, obviously the ones who make the laws are the slave masters and the colonizers. And they damn sure are not going to make laws that colonialism, that struggle against colonialism is illegal, or freedom from colonialism is legal, and freedom from slavery is legal. So I wanted to say that you should really pay attention to this. There's nothing to celebrate when you look at this thing that's happening with Trump. And I'm not defending Trump any more than I'm defending Biden, who put the 100,000 cops in our streets that killed George Floyd, that we hate so much, and killed Sandra Bland and so many of these other people we're talking about. There's a saying in Kenya that when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. And that's what we're looking at now. With this contest between different sectors of the bourgeoisie, the elephants are fighting each other, and we'd be foolish to voluntarily participate as the grass that they step on while they do this. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. Go to handsoffuhuru.org. And it's really important for us to understand that we have to come together. And I want everybody who's here to come on this Saturday to the Black is Back Coalition that's having its seventh electoral campaign school. We started that. I started that, so that Black people can participate in elections on our own terms, that we were shot out, killed out of the electoral process, even as they were talking about giving Black people the right to vote, even as they were talking about universal suffering. That happened in 1965. 1965 was the same year they killed Malcolm. 1968, they killed King. 1969, they were rounding up Black Panthers and others of us who were considered people who were fighting against colonialism. So that it meant that even though you had the right to vote, they destroyed the organization, they destroyed the programs, and so that you had the right to vote and you had nothing to vote for or nobody to vote for, and the only thing you could vote for was the Democratic Party. This is the process that they put together. So we created this coalition, and we put on the agenda, finally again, the program for our self-determination, a national Black agenda for a national Black political agenda for self-determination. We organized that and put that together. And this is the thing that gives them shudders. This is the thing that makes them commit these offenses against us, waking us up in pre-dawn raids, knocking our property, our doors down, stealing our properties and things like this. And they're doing a political offense, political crimes, and they are calling it something other than what it is. So, and that's because they cannot justify what they do. It's not justifiable based on their own principles, not my principles, on their own principles. They can't justify it, so they charge us with crimes. So I want to thank everybody for coming on to this discussion. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you, who are there and participated in the chats and what have you as well. So with that, thank you, brothers and sisters. I look forward to seeing those of you who can get to St. Petersburg, Florida. Those of you who can register now. blackisbadcoalition.org for the 7th electoral campaign school that we're doing. Those of you need to be supporting these programs and campaigns that the party and the Hutu movement have forwarding, because these are programs and campaigns that's not designed to make white people like you. This is designed to get black people power. And that's what's under assault when they attack us, the power of the people. And they do that because not only do they know that the foundation for the whole capitalist system is the oppression and exploitation of Africans and other colonized people. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you. Uhuru, vanguard up, relentless. Uhuru.